Good day, I'm Vincent Saxtetter, and this is the After the Age of Fire channel. This is episode 56, recorded on July 17th, 2026, and it will be released on August 1st. The title of this episode is Where We Stand. It's kind of a pun, a double meaning. I've been talking about the human race and its direction this is the 56th episode of that, and just finishing a section about the current transition that we are in between two eras. And so this episode is summing up all the previous episodes to talk about where the human race is now, and from now on we'll be talking about the future. So that's one meaning. Another meaning is about the channel itself. Where are we in the channel? So it's two meanings. Where is the human race, and where is this channel? Where do we stand? This is a prepping channel. It's for you and your family line to help you flourish and thrive and reproduce during the coming era. We're finishing an era of about 250 years, extraordinary years, during which the human race was doubling its consumption of just about everything every 22 years. So every generation had about twice as much as the previous generation. That era is ending. Now we're in a transition, and in the coming era, we'll have the doublings won't be occurring anymore, and we'll have a little less. We currently are consuming about 60,000 calories per person per day, averaging across the world. Most of that comes from coal, oil, and gas, 41,000 calories. Another 15,000 calories comes from food, fodder, and wood, and the remaining 5,000 calories from renewables and nuclear. And in the coming era, we'll be down to 30,000 or so, about half of where we are now, and about where we were in 1970. We're now in the last episode of the second section of this channel. The first one was about the era of doublings and about how much energy we'll be able to consume long term. The second section, which went from episodes 39 to 56, this one, 18 episodes, was about the transition between the two eras, how to recognize it, and where are we in it. And now in this present episode, I'm summarizing all that discussion in all the previous sections, and laying the way, pointing the way towards the third and final section of this channel about the future. I began this channel in episode 3 by saying that we should pay attention to reality as it is, not as we want it to be, and not focusing on our actions and our policies, our solutions to things, but focusing on the world as it is, the problems we face, the joys we face, but the world around us. Our focus has to start outside of ourselves if we're going to get anywhere. And certainly one kind of policy that we have is what I call best practices, all the things that we think we've learned over the last hundreds of years that we think are key to our continued success, and from technology to different political structures, to human rights, to education, to leisure, and thousands of concepts and practices. That shouldn't be the primary focus. It should be on seeing the world for what it is, and then figuring out what we need to do about it afterwards. We deal with life on life's terms. We don't enforce that life should be the way that we intend it to be. Okay. So, and that's been a theme throughout this channel. It will continue to be the theme, a major theme, a foundation. Let's live with life on life's terms. Next, we talked about the era of exponential growth, which started somewhere around 1775 and has continued until around the present. By now, we have around 1,000. The average human being consumes per person about 100 times more coal, oil, and gas than we did 250 years ago. And if you look at the human race as a whole, the human race as a whole is using around 1,000 times more coal, oil, and gas than we did 250 years ago. And there were similar multiplications for all other resources. And then we got into the bulk of the first section was about how much energy will be available to us long term. So we looked at all of the significant options for obtaining energy that the human race has, and we started with looking at coal, oil, and gas, and learned that fairly soon here it will stop. The supply of easy coal, oil, and gas will run out. Coal, oil, and gas will be harder and harder to get, and more expensive, and more energy and resources required to get it. So currently, energy is at a discount. It has been for some time. Right now we spend about 1/6 of our energy that we do obtain on mining, drilling, and refining. So out of every calorie of energy we get out of the ground, 1/6 of it goes right back to getting more out of the ground. But in fact, if we look at our spending, household spending, government spending, every other spending, the total amount of spending that we devote to energy is more like 1/20th. So that means that energy is at a discount. We're pricing it at something like 1/3 of its actual price. It may actually be a larger discount, and before 250 years ago, actually households would spend half their budget on obtaining food, fodder, and wood, or more. And currently it's nothing like that. Okay, so at any rate, energy is at a discount right now, and it will stop being at a discount in the coming era. You'll have to work for all your energy that you get, whatever the form. What about renewables and nuclear? They won't fill the gap. We went over those in painstaking detail several times, and they have too many consequences, too much expense, and too many risks, and too many problems that you can build some, but we won't begin to build enough to supply the amount of energy that we consume today. Perhaps we could supply. Perhaps we have enough money on hand that if we devoted our money and resources that we do have available to building as much as we can of wind, solar, and nuclear, perhaps we could supply around 1/3 of the energy consumption that we have today. But that's up to us whether it would be 1/3 or 1/6 or less. Okay, it's not a coincidence that we only obtain about 5,000 calories, 1/10 of our total energy supply today, from coal, oil. From the renewables and from nuclear. It's the fact is that the reason why we're consuming so little of them, why we're building them so slowly, is because they do have a price tag. It's not just money. And lastly, food, fodder, and wood is our last category of last way of obtaining energy. So we can try to grow more, get plants to grow better, alter them in various ways to give us more plant material and more calories. And we looked over that in detail, and they won't fill the gap either. So we're looking at a reduction in our supply of easy coal, oil, and gas, a major reduction, and then at that point, renewables and nuclear won't supply the difference. Food, fodder, and wood won't supply the difference. You can take it. You can build some. You can grow more. Perhaps if we really worked at it over a century or probably 2 centuries, perhaps we could double our harvest of food, fodder, and wood, but that would bring us up to 30,000, not to 60,000 where we are today. And that would require most of the human race. In fact, just to continue our current consumption of 15,000 calories of food, fodder, and wood, large portions of the human race will have to return to the land to work at in a much more painstaking way, giving it a lot more care to get more out of it. Because right now the land is degrading, we're losing land, we're losing our ability to grow things. So we'll need to return to the land. At least some of us will need to return to the land to get to be able to maintain the current harvest, and if we want more, then yet more of us will have to return to the land. But since energy will no longer be at a discount, the price of food, fodder, and wood will increase, and therefore people will be better paid for their work on the land. Over the last century, it's been basically impossible for a farmer, except for in some very specific circumstances like having a huge almond farm in California with water provided by the government. It's been very hard for individual farmers to stay afloat, and that will change. Out of all this discussion, so we're looking at how much energy we'll have long term. We'll have around 30,000 calories. Most of that will be food, fodder, and wood. All the other sources of energy will be supplemental. We also learned, and this was something that I developed after that discussion. I felt like we needed to go through the details of the discussion of our energy supplies before I could bring this up. We also learned that we live in a universe where everything sooner or later becomes tuned. Tuned is my terminology. I'm a physicist, and a theoretical physicist, and I'm conflating several physics and math ideas together, having to do with chaos and with self-organized criticality, fractals, things like that. What I mean, and so I'm not talking theology here, or some philosophy, some Buddhism, whatever. I'm talking about, and I explained that earlier in the episode 33. I really recommend to that. It was a pivotal, and it's a pivot point for this entire channel. It's a foundation point for the rest of the channel, and it hasn't been given enough attention. Episode 33 was about what tuning is, and how the whole universe, and in particular our biosphere and ourselves, are tuned. Okay, what I mean is that somehow the physical laws of this universe conspire so that if you have something that's made out of many pieces, and the pieces aren't all the same, so they're not identical building blocks like Legos that are all the same size and shape, okay, but they have some variation, and if you subject that system to pressure and to intermittent or regular shocks, then progressively it will become tuned. Tuned means in a situation where the whole does the best possible job at something. So, for example, if you take you have air flowing, and that's your and then you put a barrier in front of that airflow. Okay, that's the pressure, and then what will happen is that the airflow will develop vortices, things like tornadoes, around the boundary of the barrier, and it will flow around the barrier, but as it does that, it has these vortices and things, turbulence. You see this when you see air flowing past a flag. The flag flaps because it's a barrier, and there are vortices being formed in the air that push the flag around. And what is the air doing the best job at? It's doing the best job of exerting force on the barrier. Okay, it's of course not a solid object. Okay, but it's organizing itself in some way with very small vortices, larger vortices, and larger vortices to um, to exert the maximum possible force on the barrier. So that's its best possible job. You can also take say a copper wire, and you can flex it over and over and over again. As you flex it, it will become stiffer and stiffer and stiffer until it hits the maximum possible stiffness. Okay, the next time you try to twist it, it will break. Okay, so what's it getting to be the best at as it's tuning? At being as stiff as possible. Okay. So all of its pieces are arranging to create the maximum stiffness. So that's the best possible job, sense of tuning. But there's another sense, which is that in this best possible state, this tuned state, every part, the whole depends on every little part, every piece. Okay? And every piece has many roles. It affects many things in many ways. Okay? So there are no bit parts in a tuned system. It's unlike most human machines, or almost all human machines, where every little piece has a particular function, and you know what that function is, you take that away, and you know which function stops working. With tuned systems, each piece has many functions, so you affect many different aspects of its behavior and identity as soon as you take away one little piece. Okay. And another way of saying it is that there's no bit parts. Okay. And another one is that there's a butterfly effect in tuned systems, that you change anything, no matter how small, and it can cause changes in the overall behavior of the whole system. So going back to air flowing past flags, okay, airflow, if I cough here, or a butterfly flaps its wings today, it could change the direction of a typhoon's movement a month from now on the other side of the world. That's the butterfly effect. Okay. So each piece has many roles. There are no bit parts in a tuned system, and the whole is doing the best possible job at something or other. Okay. Now, along with that, invariably with tuned systems, the whole is vulnerable to hidden poisons, things that are hard to find. But when you do find those things, the whole thing collapses, okay? Or it has some huge effect. Maybe not collapse, but some far beyond what you would expect. So, so if I step on the wrong, so I have snow falling on a mountain, and the snow accumulates. It's under relentless pressure from gravity as it's accumulating, and the mountain and the snow find some way to hold the maximum amount of snow. It arrives at a tuned state. Okay, and then I go for a walk on the mountain, and if I'm lucky, then as I walk, I walk across the mountain, no problems. That's the normal way that snowpacks are. But in a tuned state, there's always a chance that as I walk across it, I will step on the poisonous site, okay, that takes the whole snow mass down in an avalanche. So once the system is tuned, we have this with weather too, that it's been demonstrated over and over again. It's not reliable because poisons are hard to identify. But you can seed clouds, and from time to time, cloud seeding produces torrential downpours. Just a small change, you throw some crystals of some material into the air, and suddenly you have a huge downpour. And we have this in biology too, where a very small quantity of something can kill a large animal, or a large plant. And what's different is that is that species reproduce themselves, and they also share DNA and genes between species. So if a poison kills one monkey, it'll kill a million monkeys, and it may kill also horses, rabbits, and humans. Okay, so because species reproduce themselves, a poison is not a single-use thing. The poison can be used millions of times. Okay. It's not that way with snowpacks. The poisonous site on the snowpack that brings down an avalanche is different from mountain to mountain and from day to day, from year to year. So overall, a tune system, whatever change you make to it, may have very large effects, larger than you would expect. So another way of talking about tuning, I suspect that tuning, the mathematical and physics concept, is more or less, and I said this in episode 33, I suspect that it's more or less the same idea as the traditional notion of beauty before the current centuries, where beauty became something in the eye of the beholder, something that amuses you or something. Okay. Traditionally, beauty was thought to be something real, a real descriptor of real things, like whether something was true or not. And so you could say objectively if something's beautiful or not, and this thing is more beautiful than that. And so Thomas Aquinas described beauty in three terms, three things that he thought made something beautiful. One was the word consonance. If there's a harmony or balance between the parts in an attuned system, you inevitably arrive at some sort of balance between the parts. The second was an integrity or a completeness. Integrity. It means that there's no defect and no excess in the system. Somehow everything's doing its job, and there's not too much of it and not too little of it. And the third one is clarity, which helps us to see the thing clearly and inspires admiration. So when you take a good look at any particular instance of any species, take a good look at it, you think about all that's in it, it'd be hard to not be dumbfounded with what it's doing, by what it's doing. And same thing with, say, if you look at weather systems and the immense detail of if you could see all of the detail of the weather flow, the vortices, and you would just you could be entranced. It's like one thing you can see is a waterfall. When you see a waterfall, the water spewing over a cliff, and see it as it unfolds itself and refolds and smashes itself against rocks, and you could spend days just gazing at a waterfall. That's clarity. So the reason why I think this was a real turning point in the episode, in this channel, and it's absolutely foundational for all the rest of the content of this channel, is that we are tuned, and the biosphere is tuned. We're tuned. In fact, we grew up in the biosphere, and so we're tuned. And part of that tuning is living as in a certain way, in a certain role within the biosphere. That role is that we were, for 3 million years, we and our ancestors were hunter-gatherers. So always on the move, in some way dominant. Life was exciting, and a lot of strength and alertness and intelligence, and full use of the body. A lot of cooperation, teamwork, and so on. And that's the core reason why renewables are so limited and expensive for us. The amount of energy that they can give us is so limited. The core reason for that is that they're quite far from the biosphere's way of delivering energy and resources to us. the way that we are built for receiving energy and resources involves plant material, or things, carbon-based compounds, and and coal, oil, and gas are a step away from that because they're not bio anymore. They've been underground for tens of millions of years, but they're still carbon-based. Okay, but once you get into electricity, all the renewables are about producing electricity. Then we have something that our only encounter with electricity as hunters and gatherers was when we watched lightning along the horizon. Other than that, things that would change even 20 times a second, much less millions of times per second, we're just not there. We're in the position of we're dealing with something that we're completely unprepared for. As soon as you turn on a video involves 30 frames per second. Our brains are just unable to notice. In fact, we start hallucinating. We start thinking we're actually there. And the thing is actually, it goes directly to a very deep part of our brain, and there's no filtering it. It's impossible to keep your eyes off of a TV because we're of video for very long, because we are hunter-gatherers built to focus on anything that moves. The fact that we're tuned and that the biosphere is tuned is also the reason why we can't increase our supply of calories from food, fodder, and wood very much. We looked into all the changes that you could make to plants and to farms, and in particular we looked at all of the genetic changes that people are considering to make to plants. And the problem is that you change one aspect of a plant's genes, and you have unimaginable, unpredictable effects on the rest of all of its behavior. So you're trying to do something to make it more drought resistant, and but you have 20 different effects from that one gene change, and one that you were counting on that should help with drought resistance, and then 19 others which cripple the plant or kill it. It invariably happens. Okay. So we're getting very little mileage on we know an awful lot more about genes than we used to, but we're getting very little mileage in terms of being able to actually get a better harvest. So we grew up here in this biosphere, and we and it are tuned, in every change that we make to our lives and to the biosphere has consequences which are far larger than we can foresee or expect, and we often don't even notice the consequences until long afterwards, if ever. So I think this was like episode 34, follow on to episode 33, about I said it was the true price of renewables, and I was explaining why renewables are so expensive, so hard. In fact, the further that a change takes us away from being hunter-gatherers, from that lifestyle, the bigger the consequences and burdens. So the consequences of using coal, oil, and gas, the burdens, the quote poisoning, as I call it, of using coal, oil, and gas are far larger than the consequences of hunting and gathering. Of farming and pasturing. Farming and pasturing is already a step away from hunting and gathering. Coal, oil, and gas take you a big step further. And then electricity-based lifestyle is yet another step. So each of these steps is more poisonous than the last, has bigger consequences. So if you're thinking carefully, you'll do them less. Okay, I'm not saying don't use renewables. I'm just saying the price of renewables, the actual price, if you could count all the consequences for the human race of 1,000 calories of, say, solar, the price tag of that 1,000 calories of solar is considerably larger than the price tag of 1,000 calories of coal, oil, and gas, and that's again significantly larger price tag than 1,000 calories of food, fodder, or wood. Okay, those are the consequences. So if you want to minimize the consequences and the burden, you'll choose more of the one that's closer to the biosphere and less of the one that's further. We should pick our poisons wisely. Okay, we should pick our technological choices wisely, but in fact we haven't. We take every possibility that we have and we take it to the max. We just push it as far as it will go. Okay, and we've done that in particular with coal, oil, and gas. In 1970, we crossed the point where our coal, oil, and gas were no longer a supplement to food, fodder, and wood. But now we're using about 3 times as much coal, oil, and gas as food, fodder, and wood. I think we're beginning to feel the consequences. I think that's the burden that I've been talking about, and I'll talk about in the next minutes. But I think it's been hard to see those consequences. So I want to mention that among you have with there's the third step that I talked about was electricity-based energy. It's video, it's digital. Okay, there's a first level where you use the electricity that's supplied by coal, oil, and gas. Okay, and then there's another level where you go to wind, and then most poisonous of all, most severe consequences of all are solar and nuclear. And wind, solar, and nuclear, they're called, at least wind and solar, and sometimes nuclear, are called green energy. They're not green at all. They're an alternative to the biosphere. You build more of them, you not necessarily shove part of the biosphere out of the way, and you're trying to set up a lifestyle that has nothing to do with the biosphere. So now we're finishing section 2 of this channel about the transition, what it looks like and where we are in it. We have enough coal, oil, and gas to double our consumption at least one more time. Probably not much more than one more time. So that means we're almost done. We've already multiplied our consumption of coal, oil, and gas by 1,000 or so. So one more doubling is small compared to how far we've come. Okay, but it does mean we could keep going for another 25 years or so, ramping up our consumption. That's one thing we learn. Another one is that we cannot end ourselves, the human race, abruptly, quickly with nuclear war with any other option. Okay, we just aren't willing to work together to make that happen. Okay, we aren't all willing to march to ground zero in 10,000 different cities and wait for the bombs to arrive. So a nuclear war could kill 2 or 3 billion of us, but not all 8 billion. I discussed that in detail in one episode. And that episode also explains some of the things you might do in order to maximize your chances of surviving a nuclear war. But even though we can't kill ourselves abruptly, quickly, we do have a death wish. Okay, somewhere, sometimes more conscious, sometimes less conscious, the human race and most or all of us harbor a death wish, that we wish death to ourselves or to our family, to our friends, or to our enemies, or to everyone. Okay, and sometimes it's very obvious, and sometimes not. Okay, but right now it's extremely obvious the death wish has become dominant. Okay, in human affairs, we have built a nuclear machine ready to kill 2 or 3 billion at one blow. 2 or 3 billion. We have replaced a thing is our damage to the biosphere, where humans and our cattle, our livestock, the total body weight of us with all our livestock and so on, I think is 20 times the body weight of all other land animals with spines. It's one thing to grow, and it's another thing to just completely replace, and that's what we've done. A third manifestation of the death wish is abortion. Since 1980, we've killed something like 2 billion babies. Child sacrifice is back in a big way. And the fourth one is failure to reproduce. The human race, most countries, most areas of the world are no longer having enough children so that the next generation will have less children than the present one. And many countries are at 1/2, so that the next generation will have 1/2 as many children as the present one. And that will continue that very long, and you won't have a country anymore. And that's true for many countries around the world, and we have many countries have tried to turn this around, and so far there's no evidence that once a country goes below replacement rate, significantly below replacement rate for any length of time, say 20 years, that it's possible to recover and bring that back up. So much of the human race, many of the world's countries are on target, are on a trajectory that will take them to no longer existing. The two exceptions are the stands and much of Africa. And in particular in Africa, there are about 1 billion people who are doubling their population at each generation. So if they keep going for 50 years, they'll go up to 4 billion. So we'll see whether that happens. Okay, but the rest of the world is on target to disappear. So the way things are going, the Africans will have the run of the planet pretty soon here. So we have enough energy to continue our doublings at least one more time, but in fact we are in a state of collapse. Okay, we're not preparing or organizing to make a pivot to enter the new era. Instead, we're still pursuing growth at all costs. If you don't have percentage growth every year, then you're a failure. Okay. Moreover, we talked about technocracy and totalitarian control and AI, whether those are able to force a pivot, and they're not. Instead, we're like an aged person or aged structure under a huge burden. It's doing its best to carry the burden. In this case, the burden would be the continued doublings, but in fact is priming itself for collapse. Okay. I want to mention so far very little of the burden is actually from renewables. We're getting very little energy from renewables. The burden is from coal, oil, and gas having a glut of energy and other resources, and from adoption of electrical devices and digital technologies. Okay. Our growth has become slow, weak, tenuous, and questionable. It's not clear whether the human race's economy is actually growing, or whether it actually might have actually been in recession for a decade or two already. I don't know. And I discussed reasons why it's hard to be sure about these things. And overall, one day, pretty soon, and I also went over a few episodes ago the decay and collapse at every level of human society, from individuals on up to nations and larger organizations. So one day, fairly soon, the claim of continuing triumph and progress will become an old, tired lie, and we will get sick of it and abandon it. So our death wish grows and grows, and our families and societies and individual personalities are dissolving. our economic growth is doubtful and we're not reproducing. And the problem is a problem of our wills and our hearts. Okay, it's a heart in the old sense of what's behind your decisions, not in the new sense of your emotions. So science and technocracy can't solve this problem. Okay, and in any case, science seems to be slowing down, not speeding up. Well, we're at a crossroads. When you hear bad news, you should think maybe this is we're beginning an adventure. Okay, we've been in 250 years of adventure, but now we're entering a new kind of adventure. Okay, the rules have changed, the challenges have changed, but we're in an adventure, maybe even a bigger one. At this crossroads, there are two kinds of ways to go. There will be people and families and societies that push forward, that keep wearing the golden handcuffs that we're wearing, and these guys will collapse and not reproduce. Okay, they'll get stuck in their cars, in their balloon housing, their air conditioning. They'll keep their eyes on their cell phones and their video. They'll lose their strength and their self-discipline and their independence. They'll lose and betray their families and their communities. They'll not keep any social contract with anybody, certainly not their employers. They'll not be alert to changes, and we're getting into a time of change, new kinds of changes. They'll be unable to adapt, and they'll be unable to profit from any new opportunities that come up. Okay. So that's this kind of person or family or society. They'll encounter a steady loss of quality of life. Their health will get worse. The health care will be less and less helpful to them. Lower quality health care, less of it. Their housing will get poorer. Their public services will decrease. Policing will disappear. The energy supply will become more and more intermittent and more expensive. Public order and safety will become questionable. Retirement funds will disappear. Quality of food will plunge, and their children will not be interested in them if they have any. They'll grow up and leave and not take care of them. Their spouses may be too busy with a lover or with their cell phone to have much time for you. And their friends won't have too many of them. Okay. At least the real kind, not the Facebook kind. And then of course there'll always be euthanasia waiting for you. So that's if you take one kind of crossroad, one kind of direction from the crossroad, you try to stick with the plan of action, the recipe for success that we've had so far, and you'll end up here. Okay, but there's another way, another turn you can make at this crossroads, and it's a life-giving turn. Okay, you can. There is a way towards new and better, maybe not more doubling your energy, but a better life. Okay, already significantly better than the life we have now. Okay. People and families and societies who engage in careful discernment and pick their poisons wisely, choose carefully what ways they want to live closer to the original way of living, and which ways that they're willing to accept are proposed to them by the current society, and they choose carefully about that. They step away from the oversupply of all goods and foods and so on. They get their hands dirty and in the ground or doing things, handwork. They have sharpened minds. They go back to the land and make themselves adaptable to whatever comes up. They make themselves persistent and agile and strong, not strong like bodybuilder or health club strong. This kind of strength that allows you to actually get things done with real things that need to be done on the land, with real objects, with your hands. And and these people will struggle for each other. They'll show faithfulness to each other over generations. They'll have extended families. They'll build communities that last for generations. They'll sacrifice and they'll serve each other, and they'll have courage, and courage when necessary, all the way to, well, you know, being willing to defend with your life. And these people will value faithful words and faithful friends, and know the difference between a faithful word and one that's not, a faithful friend and one that doesn't just be able to smell it. And they'll be running from lies and from anything close to slavery. Credit cards, for instance. This kind of person and family and society, they'll find new opportunities, and they'll find strength when others see only collapse and poorer and poorer lifestyles. They'll in fact be a strength to others. People who take this path will be a strength to others. They'll be able to provide things for others who haven't taken the path yet. And they'll be needed. Somebody who can use their hands will be needed. Somebody who can think, who can adapt, who can see things as they are, will be needed. And therefore they'll be able to flourish and thrive and reproduce. So what I'm describing with this crossroads is some people at this crossroads will make choices that lead to their family line continuing, and they themselves may prosper in it. Hopefully, but their family line will actually reproduce and prosper, thrive. And people who take the other choice, the other direction, may have a bit more comfort at first, but their lifestyle will fall apart, and their family line will not continue and will not thrive and will not be able to adapt, and that family line will disappear. So we have a kind of thing where certain people and certain families, certain societies will select themselves out, a bit like natural selection, except for that you're making the choices, and the choices will arrive at either at you and your family line not continuing, or at you and your family line being able to thrive and reproduce. Okay. We don't need to worry much about, we need to be concerned for these people who select themselves out, have some pity and empathy for them, but we don't need to worry much about whether they're going to dominate the future of the human race. People who want to use, for instance, technology to dominate, or to dominate other people, or to continue destroying the planet. These people, when they invest too much in that, they just ensure that they themselves and their families will collapse. Okay? And in the end, they won't be here generations from now. They'll have selected themselves out. So I want to quote the Bible, where it says, "Blessed are the meek, for they will inherit the earth." Okay, it's literally true. Okay, people who stick their head up too high, who insist on luxury, they aren't going to inherit anything. They're going to disappear. So now we're entering the third section of the channel, which is about the new era, what it will be like, how to prepare for it, how to thrive in it. Okay, and then I'll end with a discussion, an extended discussion of what kind of story are we in. This has been a very dramatic time, 250 years of explosive growth, and now we're all our notions of having developed a scheme for the permanent ongoing success and expansion of the human race are about to are coming to an end. What does it all mean? What's it all about? And so I'll end with some discussion of that. Okay. At this point, I'm going to very clearly change my posture in this channel. Until now, I've been discussing things as they are and trying to see things for what they are. Here I'm going to begin making some direct recommendations about the way forward, which way is a life-giving way and which way is not. I'll be saying this is the way, walk in it. Okay. Now I'm not God, so I don't have a perfect knowledge of everything. This is not revealed scripture. Okay, but I think there's a lot of truth here, and certainly a lot you can learn from. So I think you can really profit from this. Otherwise, I wouldn't have spent all this time, and I wouldn't continue spending this time. There is a way forward. I'm sure there is, and I can tell you some of the major aspects of this way forward. Okay. In the meantime, until next time, have a great week. If you know anybody who would be interested in this content, please invite them to join in and keep coming back.